My daughter Amanda gave her father-in-law a shiny Bentley, and for my 65th birthday, she gave me $30 worth of shampoo with a mocking smile. Dad, you don't deserve more than that. A week later, she called 25 times, begging, Daddy, stop. But it was too late. I couldn't just stop. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening in the comments. The glass of Merlot trembled in my hand as Amanda's voice cut through the chatter of Edward Barnes's birthday party. Dad, maybe one day you'll trade that rusty pickup for something with a bit of shine. Her diamond earrings glinted under the string lights, her smirk sharper than the steak knives on the linen-draped tables. The guests, neighbors, colleagues, Concord well-to-do, froze, their laughter fading into awkward coughs. I tightened my jaw, the heat rising in my chest. Funny, Amanda, I said, forcing a chuckle. Some of us value reliability over flash. My voice stayed steady, but my grip on the glass didn't. A bead of wine slid down the stem, catching the light like a warning. Edward's backyard buzzed with cicadas and clinking champagne flutes. His sprawling lawn with roses and a fountain screamed wealth. I admired his taste, but tonight envy twisted into something else. Amanda tossed her hair, turning to Edward with a syrupy smile. Daddy-in-law, you deserve the best. Don't you think, David? Her husband, my son-in-law, nodded, his Rolex catching the light as he raised his glass. Absolutely, David said, his tone slick as the Bentley they just unveiled. Only the finest for Dad. He clapped Edward's shoulder, ignoring me entirely. The crowd murmured approval, their eyes darting between us. I stood there, my khakis and button-down feeling. Plainer by the second. Let's show them the real star of the night. Amanda called, beckoning everyone toward the street. The guests surged forward, their excitement palpable. I followed, my loafers sinking into grass, my pride still stinging from her jab. She hadn't always been this way. My little girl, who'd once begged for piggyback rides, now wielded her words like weapons. The Bentley gleamed under the streetlights, its sleek black curves drawing gasps. A Continental GT, David announced, puffing out his chest. Fully loaded for the man who has everything. Edward beamed, running his hand along the hood. The car's surface reflected the crowd, their faces alight with awe. My own reflection stared back, distorted, my eyes hollowed by the curve of the glass. I shoved my hands in my pockets, swallowing the ache. Generous kids. You've got, I guess, Michael from the country club muttered beside me. He sipped his scotch, oblivious to the knot in my gut. They sure know how to make a statement. I said, my voice lighter than I felt. Amanda hugged Edward, her performance flawless, while David tossed a key fob in the air, catching it with a grin. The crowd clapped, but I caught her glance, a fleeting cold flicker in my direction. It wasn't just indifference, it was disdain. I raised my glass for a toast. To Edward, David cut in. Robert, no boring speeches. Dad's a man of the hour. Amanda laughed sharply. I lowered my glass, forcing a smile. The party swirled on. Plates of lobster sliders passed around. The quartet launching into a lively rendition of Fly Me to the Moon. I drifted to the edge of the lawn, my mind replaying her words. Rusty pickup. I'd driven her to college in that truck, packed it with her dorm furniture, her dreams. I'd paid for that. Education, those opportunities, while she and David built their glossy life. And now this. Robert, you okay? Linda, Edward's neighbor, touched my arm, her brow furrowed, her wine glass tilting slightly, a red droplet splashing onto the grass. Just taking it all in, I lied, nodding toward the crowd. Linda hesitated, then rejoined her husband, leaving me with the weight of my thoughts. I wanted to confront Amanda, to demand why she'd turned so sharp, but the words wouldn't form. Not here, not now. The argument came later, as the guests thinned out. I found her by the dessert table, rearranging macarons with that same calculated grace. Amanda, I started, my voice low. That comment about my truck. What? Was that? She didn't look up. Oh, Dad, don't be so sensitive. It was a joke. Her tone was light, but her eyes were still. A joke? I stepped closer, my glass slamming onto the table, the clatter cutting through the music. You think humiliating me in front of everyone is funny? Her lips twitched, not quite a smile. Humiliating? Dad, you're making a scene. David appeared at her side, his arms sliding around her waist. Easy, Robert, he said, his voice dripping condescension. No need to ruin a good night. He patted my shoulder, the gesture heavy, dismissive. A few. Guest glanced over. Their whispers like static in my ears. I opened my mouth to retort, but Edward called Amanda over, his voice warm, oblivious. She glided away, leaving me with David's smirk and the sting of her words. I stood there, the party's glow dimming, my pulse loud in my ears. Later, as the last guest trickled out, I lingered by the street. The Bentley sat silent, its polish catching the streetlights, a beacon of everything I wasn't. My birthday was a week away, my 65th. I'd been so sure Amanda would mark it with something special, something to rival this. But now doubt crept in, cold and heavy. Would they treat me the same? Or was I just a fool who kept hoping? The cicadas sang on, and I turned toward home, the Bentley's glow burning in my mind. I walked Concord's dark streets, my steps echoing in the quiet. Amanda's words, her cold glance, David's laugh, they churned in my mind. At home, I sank into my armchair, lights off, and sat until midnight, sifting through memories of my little girl who'd once been different. The next morning, I woke with a weight in my chest, but the sun spilling across the porch offered a faint hope that Amanda might still surprise me. The morning sun spilled across my porch, warming the coffee mug in my hands as Concord stirred awake. Kids pedaled past on bikes, their laughter bouncing off the tree-leaned street. I leaned back in my wicker chair, the creak of it, familiar, grounding. 3 days until my 65th birthday, and despite the sting of Edward's party, I couldn't shake the hope that Amanda would come through. A gift like that, Bentley, sleek, bold, maybe it was my turn. Morning, Robert. My neighbor Sarah waved from her mailbox, her terrier yapping at her heels. Big plans for the big 65? I grinned, setting my mug down. Just a little backyard shindig. You and Roger coming? Wouldn't miss it. She tugged her dog back, chuckling. Amanda got something grand planned after that Bentley for Edward. She trailed off, her smile curious. My chest tightened, but I kept my tone light. We'll see. She's full of surprises. Sarah nodded and headed inside, leaving me with the echo of her question. Surprises? Amanda had always been good at those, even as a kid. Crayon drawings tucked under my pillow, her gap-toothed grin lighting up. My world. Now, though, her surprises cut deeper. I grabbed my keys and drove to the cafe on Main Street with a buzz of chatter, and Senna Cinnamon offered needed comfort. Robert, the usual. Sophia, the owner, leaned over the counter, her apron dusted with flour. Black coffee, 2 sugars, I said, sliding onto a stool, and one of those scones if you're feeling generous. She laughed, her earrings swinging. For you always turning 65 soon, right? Bet Amanda's got something big planned. Her words were warm, but they landed like a stone. I forced a smile, nodding as she poured my coffee. While waiting, I glanced at my phone. No messages. I'd texted Amanda yesterday about the party. A simple, hope you and David can make it. No reply yet. My thumb hovered over her name, but I pocketed the phone instead. Let her come to me. A radio ad about college tuition recalled Amanda's graduation, my sacrifices for her education. The ache grew after her jab at the party. At home, I found Roger, Sarah's husband, wrestling with a loose fence post in his yard. Need a hand? I called, hopping out of the truck. Robert, you're a lifesaver, he grunted, passing me a hammer. We worked in companionable silence, the thud of nails steadying my thoughts. As we finished, Roger wiped his brow. So, what's Amanda getting? You? but it's something flashy, like that car she gave Edward. I laughed, but it sounded hollow. Maybe long as she shows up, I'm happy. The lie tasted bitter. I wanted more than her presence. I wanted her respect. Later, I polished my pickup in the driveway, the rag, gliding over its faded blue hood. It wasn't a Bentley, but it had carried us through blizzards, moves, memories. I paused, catching my reflection in the windshield. Gray hair, lines deeper than I remembered. Reliable. Amanda had called me once, long ago. Now she mocked that reliability. The thought nodded, but I pushed it down. She'd come around. She had to. My phone buzzed as I headed. Inside, a text from Amanda. We'll try to make it. Busy week. No warmth, no emoji, just those curt words. My smile faltered, my thumb tracing the screen. Busy. After all I'd done, all I'd given. I typed a quick sounds good. See you, then, and hit send. My optimism fraying at the edges. By evening, I was in the backyard stringing up party lights. The air was warm, the grass soft underfoot. I imagined the scene, neighbors laughing, Amanda unveiling some grand gesture. A watch maybe, or a trip. Something to show she saw me. Really saw me. I clipped the last light in place, its glow flickering against the dusk. A breeze swept through, cool and sharp, carrying the faint buzz of my phone. I checked it. Nothing. Just the wind and that nagging doubt, whispering she might. Let me down again. Birthday morning dawned with clear skies and the bustle of final preparations. I set up tables, checked the grill, and glanced at my phone again. No messages from Amanda. Guests started arriving by evening, their voices filling the yard with the warmth I craved. I stood by the gate, greeting everyone, but my eyes kept drifting to the road, searching for her. Car. Laughter spilled across my backyard, mingling with the twang of a country playlist from the Bluetooth speaker. The string light swayed, gently, casting a warm glow over the folding tables covered in checkered cloths. My 65th birthday party was in full swing. Neighbors, my brother James, old friends from the engineering firm, all raising plastic cups in my honor. I stood by the grill, a beer in hand, grinning as Sarah told a story about her terrier stealing a burger last summer. The air smelled of char hot dogs and lilac, and for a moment I felt whole. To Robert, James called, hoisting his drink, the man who keeps Concord running. The crowd cheered, and I waved them off, my cheeks warm. Their gifts piled up on a table. A homemade apple pie from Sarah. A history book on the Revolution from James. A bottle of whiskey from Michael at the club, thoughtful each one. My eyes kept drifting to the gate, though, waiting for Amanda and David. They'd show up. They had to open this. One next. Sophia from the cafe pushed a small box toward me, her smile wide. I tore the paper, revealing a mug with world's best engineer scrolled in bold. Letters. The crowd hooted, and I held it. Up, my laugh genuine. Sophia, you're too kind, I said, setting it with the others. My chest swelled with gratitude, but beneath it, anticipation churned. Amanda's gift. What would it be? After that Bentley for Edward, I couldn't help imagining something big. A watch, maybe, or a gesture that said, I see you, Dad. I checked my phone. No texts. They were running late, but the night was young. 2 hours later, the gate creaked. Amanda swept in, her silk dress shimmering, David trailing an A, tailored blazer. They looked like they'd stepped off a magazine cover, out of place among the jeans and sundresses. I rushed over, my smile wide despite their tardiness. You made it. Traffic. Amanda said, air kissing my cheek. Her perfume was sharp, overwhelming. David nodded, already scrolling his phone. My stomach dipped, but I brushed it off, leading them to the food table. Grab a plate. Join the fun, I said, gesturing to the spread. Coleslaw, burgers, Sophia's famous potato salad. Amanda scanned the yard, her lips pursing slightly like she was appraising. A thrift store. Cute setup, Dad, she said, her tone clipped. David snorted, pocketing his phone. I ignored the jab, introducing them to James, who clapped David's shoulder a bit too hard. The party rolled on, but their presence shifted the air. They hovered near the dessert table, whispering to each other, barely mingling. I caught Sarah's raised eyebrow, Michael's sidelong glance. Then Amanda approached, a store-bought gift bag dangling from her. Fingers, tissue paper spilling out like a bad prom dress. Happy birthday, Dad, she said, handing it over. Her smile was tight, her eyes elsewhere. The crowd quieted, watching. I took the bag, my heart pounding. This was it. I reached inside, pulling out a bottle of shampoo and a bar of soap, generic, the kind you grab at a gas station. The bag hit the table with a soft thud, tissue paper crumpling. For you, Amanda said, her voice loud, performative. You don't deserve more. A few guests gasped. David chuckled, leaning back in his chair. My fingers tightened around the shampoo, the plastic cool against my palm. I forced a laugh, my face burning. Thanks. I managed, setting it down. Creative choice. The words tasted like ash. I wanted to believe it was a joke, but her smirk, his laugh, they weren't joking. Dinner brought more. We sat at the long table, the clink of forks and chatter filling the gaps. Amanda leaned forward, her voice cutting through. This house, Dad, it's so quaint. Everything of upgrading. Her tone was sugar-coated, but the barb was clear. Guests shifted, their smiles strained. It suits me, I said, my fork pausing midair. Not everyone needs a mansion. A few nodded, but her eyes narrowed. David jumped in, his grin wolfish. Yeah, but a little ambition never hurt, right, Robert? Maybe freshen up that smell of yours. He waved a hand like swatting a fly. Laughter sputtered from Amanda, cruel and sharp. A child at the table. Michael's granddaughter tugged my sleeve, her eyes wide, confused. The yard went quiet, the music suddenly too loud. My chair scraped back, the sound raw against the grass. Enough! I shouted, my voice cracking the air. Plates rattled. A glass tipped, water pooling on the tablecloth. Amanda's smile vanished. David's jaw tightened, but he didn't move. Every eye was on me, the weight of their stares heavy. Robert, they didn't mean, Sarah started, but I shook my head, my pulse roaring. No, I said, quiet and now but firm. They meant it. Amanda stood, tossing her napkin down. Ungrateful, she hissed, grabbing her purse. Come on, David. He followed, muttering about wasted time. They stormed through the gate, their car's engine roaring to life. Moments later, the guests sat frozen, their murmurs soft, pitying. I stared at the gift bag, its crumpled tissue mocking me. The lights flickered above, and my anger burned, steady and dangerous, with nowhere to go. The party fizzled out, guests whispering, avoiding my eyes. Some tried to make small talk, but the words felt forced. One by one they said their goodbyes, their hugs tighter than usual, as if they sensed my wound. When the last guest left, I stood alone amid scattered plates and dimming lights. The silence heavier than my anger. The backyard was silent, lights swaying. I stacked plates, thinking of Amanda's shampoo and my outburst. Enough. Had I gone too far? I carried a stack of plates to the trash. The grass damp under my loafers. The air smelled of leftover charcoal and lilac, a mix that should have felt comforting, but didn't. My brother James had stayed longest, his hand heavy on my shoulder. You didn't deserve that, Robert, he'd said, his voice gruff. They crossed a line. Sarah, my neighbor, had hugged me, her perfume soft against the ache in my chest. Stand tall, she'd whispered. Their words propped me up, but now alone, doubt crept in. I paused, a half-eaten slice of cake, staring up from plate. My reflection in the patio door caught me off guard. Gray hair mussed, eyes tired. Had I overreacted? Amanda's smirk, David's taunt about my smell, they'd meant to wound. But shouting like that in front of everyone. Maybe I'd given them what they wanted. A scene, a reason to call me ungrateful. I shook my head, grabbing a broom to sweep the deck. The bristles scraped rhythmically, grounding me. No, they'd push me. Years of their slights flashed through my mind, sharp and unbidden like the time after Amanda's wedding when I'd paid for the venue. The flowers, her dream dress. I'd called to check on her honeymoon, my voice eager, only to hear her sigh through the phone. "Dad, I'm busy," she'd said. Her tone clipped like I was a nuisance. I'd stare at the receiver, the dial tone humming, my generosity thrown back in my face. The memory stung, but it steadied me. I wasn't wrong to snap. They'd been chipping away at me for years, her coldness, his smug pats on the shoulder. I swept harder, the broom catching forgotten scarf, its silk snagging on the wood. Sarah's probably. I folded it carefully, setting it aside. Small acts of care. That's who I was, not the man they painted. James's voice came back to me, his words from earlier. "You've given them everything, Robert. What have they given you?" He lingered by the gate, his truck keys jangling. I'd shrugged, forcing a smile, but his question stuck. Nothing. They'd given me nothing but scorn. I carried the scarf inside, the house quiet, except for the creak of the floorboards. In the kitchen, Sarah's hug replayed her quiet strength, her urging me to stand tall. "They're ungrateful," she'd said as she left, her eyes fierce. "Don't let them walk over you." Her words lit something in me, a spark that hadn't died with the party's end. I sank into my armchair in the living room, the old springs groaning. The gift bag sat on the coffee table, its cheap paper crinkling as I nudged it. Shampoo and soap, a $20 insult. My fingers traced the bag's edge, the texture rough against my skin. This wasn't just a bad gift. It was a message. "You're nothing to us." The thought tightened my chest, not with sadness now, but with something harder. Anger. Righteous. Clear. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling, its familiar cracks mapping my thoughts. I'd spent my life building circuits as an engineer, a home for Amanda, a legacy of quiet sacrifice, and they'd mocked it. No more. I wasn't the fool they thought. I'd show them, not with shouts or scenes, but with something deliberate, something they wouldn't see coming. My fist clenched, the knuckles pale against the armrest. The house was dark, the only light spilling from a lamp in the corner. The gift bag seemed to pulse in the shadows. A challenge. A week after the party, I sent an anonymous letter to David's company's board directors, enclosing copies of financial documents that showed his involvement in the fraud with Edward. That same day, Amanda started calling. Her 23 calls flooded my phone, each with a plea. "Dad, stop." She didn't know for sure it was me, but she suspected. I didn't know yet what I'd do, but the decision was made. They'd crossed me for the last time, and I wasn't going to let it slide. That night, I barely slept, tossing in bed as anger and memories drove me out at dawn. I decided to walk, hoping fresh air would clear my head. My steps led me to Main Street Cafe, where the familiar buzz and smell of coffee promised a sliver of calm. The coffee maker gurgled in my kitchen, the scent of dark roast filling the air as dawn crept through the curtains. I stood by the counter, my hands wrapped around a cracked mug. Amanda's gift from a decade ago, back when she still called me Daddy. The fissure in the ceramic caught my thumb, a quiet reminder of how things break. Last night's party, the shampoo, David's taunt, it all churned in my gut. I sipped the coffee, its heat steadying me, and headed out for my morning walk. Concord was waking up, dew glinting on lawns, birds chattering in the oaks. A jogger nodded as I passed, her ponytail bouncing. I waved back, smiled, though my mind was elsewhere. The crumpled gift bag still sat on my coffee table, a wound I hadn't touched since last night. I walked faster, the spring air heavy, my loafers scuffing the sidewalk. Routine would ground me. It had to. At Main Street Cafe, the bell jingled as I stepped inside. The place buzzed with morning regulars, retirees reading papers, a mom coring her toddler. Sophia behind the counter grinned. "Robert survives the big 65. "Barely," I said, sliding onto a stool. My laugh was thin, but she didn't press. Coffee black and a bagel toasted. "Coming up," she said, her apron swishing as she turned. I pulled out my phone, more out of habit than intent, and opened Facebook. My thumb froze. Amanda's post stared back. Timestamp just after midnight. Worst father ever. Threw a tantrum at his own party. So embarrassing. Below, her friends piled on. What a jerk. You deserve better. A photo of the shampoo and soap caption. His big gift, LOL. Had 20 likes. My heart slammed against my ribs. The cafe hum fading. I gripped the phone, my knuckles white. She hadn't just mocked me in private. She'd broadcast it. Turned my pain into her performance. Sophia set my coffee down, her brow furrowing. You okay, Robert? Fine. I lied, my voice tight. Just family stuff. She nodded, hesitant, and moved to another. I scrolled again, each comment a fresh cut. Ungrateful old man. Such a drama queen. My daughter, my little girl, had weaponized the world against me. I hit her number, the phone cold against my ear. It rang twice before she picked up. What, Dad? Her voice was bored like I'd interrupted her manicure. Take it down. I said, my words clipped. That post now. She laughed sharp and brittle. Oh, please. It's just the truth. Deal with it. Deal with it. Amanda, I'm not asking. My voice stayed low, but it trembled with something dangerous. The barista glanced over, her eyes concerned, but I didn't care. You're making it worse, she said, her tone icy. Everyone saw how you acted. I'm not deleting anything. The line went dead. I stared at the phone, her laughter echoing in my skull. The mug shook in my other hand, coffee slushing over crack, burning my fingers. Robert, Michael, a regular, slid onto the stool beside me. His newspaper crinkled as he leaned in. You look like you saw a ghost. I forced a chuckle, setting the mug down. Just a rough morning. How's the grandkid? We chatted about his granddaughter's soccer game, the words mechanical. His kindness anchored me. But Amanda's post burned behind my eyes. Worst father ever. After all I'd given her, college, her wedding, my pride. I paid and left. The cafe warmth no match for the chill in my chest. Walking home, Concord streets felt different. The colonial houses watching me. My warning to Amanda replayed. You'll face consequences. And I meant it. Not a shouting match. Not a plea. Something real. The cracked mug flashed in my mind. Its flaw a mirror to our fractured bond. She thought she could humiliate me and walk away. She was wrong. Back home, I called Henry, my old accountant friend with a nose for financial schemes. I briefly told him about the party and hinted I suspected Amanda and David were up to something dirty. Meet me at the corner diner at 9:45, he said, and I felt a plan taking shape. My steps quickened. The church bell tolling the distance, its echo matching my pulse. I didn't know how yet, but I'd make her see. I'd make them both see. The diner's door swung shut behind me. The jukebox crooning an old Springsteen tune as I spotted Henry at a corner booth. His gray hair was thinner now, but his eyes still had that accountant sharpness. I slid into the cracked vinyl seat, nodding. Henry, good to see you. Robert, he said, his voice gravelly, a smile tugging at his lips. Been too long. The air smelled of coffee and fried eggs. The checkered floor scuff from years of Concord's comings and goings. The place felt like my old engineering office. Functional, no nonsense, a space for solving problems. And I had a problem. We ordered black coffee for me, decaf for him, and got to it. You said you had something on Amanda and David. I said, leaning forward, my hands clasped on the Formica table. What did you find? Henry's hand shook slightly as he pulled a folder from his bag. His arthritis worse than I remembered. You're not going to like it, he warned, sliding it over. Look at this. I opened it, my eyes scanning bank statements, wire transfers, Edward's name in bold. My pulse quickened. They bought that Bentley for Edward, Henry said, his voice low. Big show at his party, right? Thing is, it wasn't their money. They siphoned it from Edward's accounts, forged his signature, moved funds through a shell company. Slick but sloppy. I leaned back, the booth creaking. The Bentley, sleek, gleaming. Their grand gesture was a lie. my daughter and her husband, stealing from her father-in-law to play the heroes. My coffee sat untouched, steam curling up like a warning. How'd you get this? I asked, my voice steady despite the rage bubbling inside. Old habits, Henry said, tapping his temple. I still know people at the bank. They owe me favors. He sipped his decaf, wincing. Edward doesn't know yet, but this ain't their first rodeo. They've been skimming for years. I flipped through the papers, numbers blurring. Amanda's cold laugh from our call yesterday rang in my ears. Deal with it. She thought she was untouchable. David, with his smug grins, thought the same. My jaw tightened. A plan forming, though its edges were still vague. I'd been an engineer. Circuits, systems, solutions. I could build something to bring them down. The diner's fluorescent lights buzzed, pulling me back to a memory. My old office, 1995. The hum of computers. A blueprint spread across my desk. A client's bridge design was failing. Too much stress on the joints. I'd stayed up all night reworking angles, testing loads. By morning, it held. Strategy, patience, precision. That's what I needed now. Not anger, but a plan. Robert? Henry's voice cut through. You okay? Yeah, I said, closing the folder. Just thinking. I slid it back to him. Keep this safe. I'll need it. He nodded, his eyes searching mine. Be careful. They're reckless, but they're not stupid. I gave a tight smile, draining my coffee. Reckless was right, and I'll use it. Outside, the spring sun was high. Concord streets alive with dog walkers and cyclists. I started home, the folders weighed in my mind. At the corner, Sarah waved from her porch, her terrier yapping. Robert heard about the party. She called, stepping closer. You didn't deserve that nonsense. Thanks, Sarah, I said, pausing, just sorting it out. Her kindness, like Michael's at the cafe, reminded me I wasn't alone. Concord had my back. It fueled me that support like a circuit completing its loop. Give them hell, she said, winking. I chuckled, the first real laugh in days, and kept walking. At home, I dug through my study, finding my old engineering notebook, leather-bound, pages yellow but sturdy. I flipped to a blank page, the pen heavy in my hand. Amanda and David thought they'd won. Thought I'd crumble, but I was done being their fool. I started jotting notes, names, dates, ideas. The desk lamp cast a narrow glow. The house dark around me. The pen scratched. Each stroke a step towards something bigger. They'd face consequences. All right, and I'd make sure they never saw it coming. The desk lamp cast a narrow beam across my study. The only light in the house as I sealed the envelope. My fingers pressed the adhesive firmly, the faint stickiness lingering on my skin. Inside were copies of Henry's documents, bank statements, wire transfers, proof that Amanda and David had stolen from Edward to buy that gleaming Bentley. I triple-checked every page, my engineer's precision guiding me. No mistakes, no trace back to me. I leaned back, the chair creaking under my weight. The house was silent, save for the hum of the fridge in the kitchen. My pulse was steady, but a quiet thrill ran through me. This was it, my first move. Not a shout, not a scene, but a calculated strike. The envelope felt heavy in my hands, a symbol of justice taking shape. They'd mocked me, humiliated me. Now they'd start to feel the weight of their own lies. I slipped the envelope into a plain manila folder and headed out, locking the door behind me. The morning air was crisp. Concord Street still sleepy under a pale May sky. At a small park near the edge of town, I met the courier, a wiry man in a gray hoodie, his eyes darting as he took the folder. No return address. I said, my voice low. Deliver it to Edward Barnes's office by noon. Cash. As agreed, he nodded, a nervous tick twitching his jaw. Got it. It'll be done. He pocketed the cash. I slid across the bench, the bills crisp against his palm. I watched him disappear down the path, his sneakers scuffing the gravel. Anonymity was my shield. Edward would get the truth, but my name wouldn't touch it. In the library, I sat at a computer accessing public records. My engineering skills and financial data courses helped track Amanda and David's spending Credit card filings, property records, a trail of extravagance, designer clothes, a second home in Nantucket, dinners that cost more than my monthly grocery bill, greed laid bare in black and white. I scribbled notes, my pen scratching furiously, each fact a brick in the wall I was building. The library's quiet took me back to 1987, my drafting table cluttered with blueprints. A client's warehouse project was failing. Faulty beams, bad math. I'd reworked the design in one night. Coffee cups piling up, my slide rule a blur. By dawn, it was perfect. That same focus drove me now. Amanda and David weren't beams, but they were flawed, breakable. I'd find the stress points. Robert, Mrs. Green. The librarian paused by my table, her glasses perched on her nose. You're deep in it today, researching for the Historical Society? I smiled, closing my notebook. Something like that. Just digging into Concord's past. A half-truth, but it landed. She chuckled, adjusting a stack of books. Well, don't miss our talk on the Old North Bridge next week. You'd love it. Her warmth reminded me why I stayed in this town. People who saw me, not the caricature my daughter painted. I nodded, promising considerate, and she shuffled off, leaving me to my work. I left the library with a stack of printed records, my mind buzzing. The documents for Edward were just the start. Every lavish purchase, every shady deal, they were ammunition. I drove home, the truck's engine a steady hum, my thoughts sharp. Amanda's laughter from our last call, deal with it, echoed, but it didn't sting anymore. It fueled me. At home, I sank into my armchair, the house dark except for the glow of my phone. I checked it obsessively, waiting for any sign that Edward had received the packet. The screen stayed blank, but my anticipation grew, a live wire in my chest. The envelope was out there, a spark waiting to ignite. I set the phone down, my fingers tapping the armrest. The silence of the house louder than ever. From the edge of Edward's estate, I sipped coffee from a thermos. My truck parked discreetly behind a row of maples. His mansion loomed across the street. White columns, iron gates, a fortress of wealth. Amanda's BMW screeched into the driveway, David's Audi close behind. They spilled out, her heels clicking, his tie loose, both moving like cornered animals. Edward had called them, no doubt about the documents I'd sent. I stayed low, my pulse quick, savoring the crack in their perfect facade. I didn't linger, too risky. I drove to Main Street, the thermos still warm in my hand, and slipped into the coffee shop. The place was cozy, all wood beams and soft lighting, the air thick with espresso and cinnamon. I took a corner table, my back to the wall, and opened my laptop, pretending to work. My real focus was a buzz around me. Concord's rumor mill already churning. Michael, my friend from the country club, slid into the seat across from me, his eyes bright with gossip. Heard something wild, he said, leaning in, his voice low. Caught a fight at the club last night. Amanda and David tearing into each other in Edward's office. She was screaming about lies and setups. He was yelling about lawyers. Sounded like Edward laid into them hard. I raised an eyebrow, keeping my face neutral. What kind of lies? My coffee cup was cracked, a hairline fracture under my thumb, mirroring the couple's crumbling image. Something about that Bentley, Michael said, stirring his latte. Edward got papers showing they used his money, forged his name, moved it through some shady account. He's furious. Edward hired a private investigator to check the documents and filed a complaint with the financial regulator, but decided not to go to the police yet to avoid a public scandal. Instead, he summoned Amanda and David and threatened to cut them off from the family funds if they did not return the money. Threatened to cut them off? He shook his head, oblivious to my role. They're scrambling, Robert. Not so high and mighty now. I nodded, a quiet thrill curling in my chest. The documents had hit their mark. Amanda's laughter, David's smirks. They were unraveling. I sipped my coffee, the bitterness sharp. Years of their slights flashed through me, like the time Amanda forgot my 60th birthday. Too busy with Gala to call. I'd waited by the phone, hopeful, only to get a text 2 days later. Sorry. Swamped. I'd swallowed the hurt then. Not anymore. The shop's door chimed, and there they were, Amanda and David, forcing smiles for a group of friends at a nearby table. Her laugh was too loud, his shoulders stiff. "Everything's fine," she said, waving off a question, her voice brittle. David ordered a coffee, his hand shaking as he paid. The barista shot them a curious glance. Sensing the strain, I kept my eyes on my screen, my heart pounding. Their public mask was slipping, and I was the one pulling the strings. Outside, I ran into Sarah, my neighbor, her terrier tugging at its leash. "Saw David in town earlier," she said, adjusting her scarf. "Looked like he hadn't slept in days." "Trouble in paradise, you think?" "Sounds like it," I said, my tone light, my smirk hidden. "Guess they've got some explaining to do." Sarah grinned, oblivious, and we parted ways. Her words fed my satisfaction like fuel on a fire. Concord was watching, judging. Their perfect life was cracking. And I wasn't done. The coffee shop's warmth lingered in my mind, pulling up another memory. Amanda's first apartment. Me hauling furniture up 3 flights. Her barely thanking me. I'd brushed it off. Told myself she was young, busy. Now I saw it for what it was. Entitlement. That patience was gone, replaced by a cold, steady resolve. As dust settled over Concord, I walked home. The air cool, the streets glowing with lamplight. My phone buzzed, a text from Michael. More drama at the Barnes. See screaming at Jay in the driveway. It's a mess. I read it twice. A faint smile tugging at my lips. The cracked coffee cup flashed in my mind. A perfect image of their fracturing world. I slipped the phone into my pocket, my steps light, the night stretching out with possibilities. The porch swing creaked under me, the morning sun warm on my face as I scrolled through Facebook. Amanda's latest post blazed across the screen, my father spreading vicious lies about us. Jealousy's ugly dad. Comments poured in, some supportive, others skeptical. My jaw tightened, but a chuckle escaped. They were flailing, accusing me to save face. And it was backfiring. A wilting petunia in a pot by the swing caught my eye, its petals curling, a quiet echo of their fading credibility. I set my coffee down, the mug cool against the weathered wood. Their desperation was almost comical. They thought they could turn Concord against me, paint me as a villain. But I'd stayed quiet, stayed hidden, let them dig their own grave. My phone buzzed. Henry, my accountant friend, asking to meet. Urgent, his text read. I grabbed my keys, the swing still swaying as I headed for the park. At Minuteman Park, Henry waited on a bench, his hands fidgeting, a nervous laugh escaping as I approached. "They tried to bribe me," he said, his voice low, glancing around. The air smelled of cut grass, leaves rustling in the breeze. "Shut up at my house last night." Amanda, all smiles, offering 10 grand to say those documents were fake. David just glared like he wanted to scare me. I leaned forward, my elbows on my knees, and told him to get lost. Henry said, his eyes hard, "I'm not playing their game." "But they're desperate, Robert. They know Edward's done with them." He shook his head, his arthritis making his fingers tremble. "Watch your back. They're cornered." I nodded, my mind racing. A bribe, sloppy, reckless. They were unraveling faster than I'd expected. "Thanks for the heads up," I said, my voice calm, though satisfaction burned in my chest. "Keep me posted." Henry clapped my shoulder, his grip surprisingly firm, and we parted ways, the park's quiet wrapping around me. The post replayed in my mind, pulling up a memory. Amanda at 8, clinging to my hand at a county fair, her eyes wide, trusting. She believed in me then, her daddy who could fix anything. Now she called me a liar to the world. The contrast sharpened my resolve like a blade honed on stone. At the corner store picking up milk, I ran into Sophia, the cafe owner. Heard Amanda stirring up drama online. She said, ringing me up, her tone gossipy but kind. "Folks are saying she's in over her head. Rough week for her, huh?" "Seems so," I said, slipping her a smile. "Guess the truth catches up." She laughed, handed me my change, and I left, the bell jingling behind me. Concord's whispers were turning against them, their allies thinning. My steps felt lighter, the milk jug swinging in my hand. Back home, I sat at my desk, pulling up the post again. The comments had shifted. Sounds like you're dodging. Amanda, what's the real story? Their support was crumbling, their lies too thin to hold. I leaned back, my smirk widening, the mouse steady into my hand. The wilting petunia flashed in my mind, a perfect image of their collapse. They thought they could outmaneuver me, but I was 3 steps ahead. My next move already forming, quiet and sharp, waiting to strike. The attorney's office door clicked shut behind me, my worn briefcase thumping onto the polished oak desk. The room smelled of leather and old books, a faint hum of traffic seeping through the window from Concord's bustling streets. Helen, my lawyer for 2 decades, adjusted her old-fashioned glasses, her sharp eyes meeting mine. "Ready to talk numbers, Robert?" she asked, her voice steady. "Professional." I nodded, setting the briefcase down, its scuffed leather, a quiet testament to years of careful choices. "Let's get to it." My voice was calm, but a current of pride ran through me. Amanda and David thought they knew me, a modest retiree, scraping by on an engineer's pension. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Helen pulled a file, her pen tapping the page. "Your investments, real estate, stocks, bonds. You built quite a nest egg. 8 figures conservatively." She leaned back, her glasses catching the light. "Most clients would have flaunted that. You didn't. Never saw the need," I said, my fingers tracing the briefcase's handle. "It was for security, not show." The room's quiet took me back to my first big investment, 1989. A rundown duplex I bought cheap, fixed up and rented out. No vacations, no fancy cars, just discipline. Every dollar saved was a brick in my fortress, one they'd never suspected. She slid a legal pad across. "You mentioned a strategy against your daughter and her husband. Defamation, fraud, serious claims. With this wealth, you've got leverage. What's the play?" I leaned forward, my voice low. "File a lawsuit. Defamation for her Facebook posts. Financial misconduct for what they did to Edward. Use the documents from Henry. Hit them where it hurts." My words were measured, but my pulse quickened. This wasn't revenge. It was justice, precise and cold. Helen scribbled notes, nodding. "We can start with a civil suit. Public records. Edward's testimony. It's strong, but it'll get messy." "You sure?" "Certain," I said, my jaw tight. "They've had their chances." She met my gaze, her nod final, and we mapped out the first steps, her pen scratching like a metronome. My phone buzzed as I stepped onto Concord's Main Street, the air sweet with blooming lilacs. Amanda's name flashed on the screen. I answered, bracing myself. "Last night." She called for the first time, screaming that she knew I had sent the documents to Edward. "You're the only one who could have gone through our finances, Dad," she said, her voice trembling with anger. I didn't confirm it, but her guess was right. "Dad, please," she said, her voice shaky, almost unrecognizable. "Whatever you're doing, stop it. You're tearing us apart." "You tore this apart," I said, my tone flat. "You made your choices." Her sob cracked through the line, but I hung up, my hand steady. She knew I was behind it or suspected. Good, let her squirm. At the bakery. Picking up a loaf of rye, Mrs. Carter beamed from behind the counter. "Robert, you're looking spry today," she said, sliding the bread into a bag. "Heard you've been the talk of the town, always helping folks out." "Just doing my part," I said, my smile genuine but brief. Her warmth grounded me, a reminder of who I was to Concord, not the villain Amanda painted. I left, the bell jingling, my mind on the lawsuit. The briefcase in my hand felt heavier, its worn surface hiding the power I'd unleashed. Back home, I spread legal papers across my dining table. The house quiet, except for clock's soft tick. Helen's draft complaint listed every lie, every theft in stark black ink. My phone buzzed again. "Amanda, another call." I let it ring, the sound sharp against the silence. My eyes stayed on the papers, each line a step closer to justice. The briefcase sat nearby, a silent partner in my plan, its scuffs glowing faintly under the lamp. The kitchen clock ticked steadily as I unfolded Helen's email. The lawsuit's filing confirmation glowing on my laptop screen. Defamation, financial misconduct, all laid out in crisp legal ease, aimed at Amanda like a well-placed arrow. My coffee steamed untouched, the morning light slanting through the window. The words blurred briefly, not from doubt, but from the weight of it. Justice finally moving. I leaned back, the chair creaking, my heart steady but fierce. I headed to the Concord market, the air alive with chatter and the scent of fresh produce. Stalls brimmed with apples, greens, homemade jams. The crowd a mix of locals and weekenders. I lingered by a honey vendor. My cap pulled low when I spotted her. Amanda across the aisle, her designer sunglasses perched on her head. Her smile was forced, her laugh too loud as she chatted with a woman who edged away, her expression cool. Friends were slipping from her grasp, their whispers sharp. I turned away, my pulse quick, savoring the cracks in her world. The market's bustle pulled up a memory. 2005, Amanda's car repossessed. Her voice panicked on the phone. I'd wired her the money, drained my savings to keep her afloat. Her thank you was a curt text. No call, no warmth. I told myself she was stressed. Now I saw it clearly in gratitude woven into her core. My hands tightened around a jar of honey. The glass cool against my skin. My phone buzzed. Amanda again. I stepped behind a stall, the crowd's noise muffling her sobs as I answered. Dad, you're ruining me, she pleaded, her voice raw. The lawsuit, the gossip. Everyone's turning on me. Please stop. You stopped being my daughter when you chose lies. I said, my voice cold, unyielding. Face what you've done. I hung up, her gas cut off, my chest tight but resolute. The market swirled around me, oblivious, a dropped apple rolling past Amanda's feet, ignored by the crowd. It lay there, bruised, a mirror to her fall. I moved through the stalls, catching snippets of gossip. Amanda's in deep, a woman muttered, hefting a basket. Stole from her own family, they say. Another nodded, her voice gleeful. Serves her right. I kept my face neutral, my cap shielding my eyes. But inside, satisfaction burned. Concord was turning, their judgment swift. At home, I called Helen for an update. It's filed, she confirmed, her tone crisp. Public record now. Her social circles already pulling back. Saw it on their posts. She's losing ground fast. I thanked her, hanging up as the kitchen clock struck noon. The lawsuit was a blade cutting through her lies, and I held the handle. Later, walking past the market at night, the stalls shuddered. I caught more whispers from stragglers. Amanda's done for, one said, their voice carrying on the cool air. The market lights glowed faintly, casting my silhouette long and steady across the pavement. David's fate loomed, untouched, a final piece of my plan. I kept walking, the whispers trailing me, their weight a quiet promise of more to come. The morning paper crinkled on my porch, the headlines stark. Local businessman fired amid financial scandal. David's name blazed in bold, his corporate headshot staring blankly from the page. I leaned back in the swing, the wood creaking, a quiet smile tugging at my lips. My anonymous tip to his company, bank records, emails, proof of his role in Edward's theft had landed. His job, his status gone. My revenge was complete, but the morning air felt lighter, freer. I sipped my coffee, the mug warm against my palms when a car pulled up, Amanda's BMW, gleaming despite her fall. She and David stepped out, her face pale, his hands trembling as he adjusted his tie. Edward called me the day before to thank me for the documents that exposed their scam. During the conversation, he casually mentioned my investments, which I had never told Amanda about. You're modest, Robert, but your wealth is impressive, he said, not knowing she was listening on the other line. They'd heard about my wealth, no doubt from Edward or some leak. They crossed the lawn, their steps hesitant like children caught stealing. I stood setting the paper down, my expression stone. Dad, Amanda started, her voice cracking. We're sorry. We didn't know. Your money, everything. Can we just talk? Her eyes darted, pleading but hollow. David nodded, his voice. We messed up, Robert. Let's fix this family, right? His hands shook, betraying his bravado. Their faces pulled up a memory. Amanda at 16, me working double shifts to pay for her dance lessons, her dreams. I'd come home exhausted. Her smile my reward. Now that girl was gone, replaced by this stranger, begging for mercy she didn't deserve. You don't get to rewrite this, I said, my voice low. Finn, justice is done. I stepped back, the door half closed, their apologies cut off by the click of the latch. They stood frozen, then shuffled back to their car, the engine roaring as they fled. I exhaled, the weight of years lifting. My home modest, but mine felt solid around me, its quiet calm, a balm. The suitcase by the door was packed. A solo trip to Maine, a cabin by the sea, booked with my own money. Freedom earned. Sarah stopped by later, her terrier yapping as she leaned over the porch rail. Robert, you're the talk of Concord, she said, her grin wide. Stood up to those two, didn't you? Always knew you had steel in you. Just doing what's right, I said, my smile warm but brief. Her praise settled over. Me, a final nod from the town that had watched my fight. I waved as she left, the terrier's barks fading down the street. I grabbed my suitcase, its leather handle smooth under my grip, a symbol of the life I'd reclaimed. The house locked behind me. I climbed into my pickup, the engine rumbling to life. Concord streets rolled past. Colonial homes, green lawns, the familiar heartbeat of my town. The open road stretched ahead, the horizon wide, my heart light. I'd face their betrayal, their lies, and come out whole. The suitcase rattled in the back, and I drove. On, free at last. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. Thank you for watching.